It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Right here, right now. And boy, am I pissed off this morning. You know why? Because I'm tired of a country that's coming apart like a cheap Chinese suit in the rain. Does that offend somebody, Chinese? Tough crap. Get lost. Hit the skids. Too bad. You know, we're sitting here and we're watching our country come apart minute by minute, hour by hour, day after day. We've got these traitors who sit up there at Capitol Hill. They're treated like dukes and lords and ladies, when basically they're sitting here knowing that the tiger's been released from the cage, and knowing that they're the ones standing there with the equipment and the weaponry and the tranquilizer gun to put the tiger back to sleep, but it's just easier to sit down and watch the show. And they're unwilling to poke that tiger in the nuts with a sharp stick for the simple reason that you're the meal. So they sit and they watch it from a safe distance. You ever watch a cat? You ever watch one? You know, it'll sit there and it's looking at that mouse or that grasshopper or that squirrel. And that cat, you know, they sit there and they move their feet and get in just the right position, and their back legs are going, and their tail is going, and their ears flatten back, and their whiskers pull back, and they sit there, and their eyes get big, boy, because they want to let in all the light. They don't want to miss a movement. You got a president, you got a Congress, you got hundreds of judges. All of them, some of them cats, some of them just observers. Too lazy and stupid to be good cats. The Treasury the other day got caught disclosing your banking information with spy agencies. Did you know that? You didn't? Silly you. Yeah, they got caught. They were sharing your personal banking data and the records that you have with the National Counterterrorism Center. I mean, you know, because maybe you did a transfer of some money to a Muslim group, you know, that's supported by the White House. And, of course, golly gee, you know, Congress, they're giving them guns and weapons. But if you donate $1,000 to a mosque, they're going to come kick your door in and shoot holes in you. But of course, don't worry about it, because it's all within the limits of our authority, they say. All of it. We have the authority. You see, when I'm abused and taken advantage of, I expect the gangster who's beating the crap out of me, stealing from me, slapping me around, and poking me in the behind to at least talk like this, because that's the way I expect a gangster to talk. Not with a lisp and a sharpened pencil behind my ear. In a very proper and format way. I expect my gangster to look and act as ruthless as he is. I don't expect my gangster to walk up like Poindexter and say, but the bill has been passed properly. Because, see, if it was a gangster who I expect to walk up and he's got a couple of scars on his face from all that street fighting, then I know how to deal with that guy, okay? Because he's violating my rights. So I basically pull out a gun and I pop him in the face. Because he's in my house after all, huh? And that's what you get. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. And the police would show up and they'd say, there's a body laying on your floor, sir. Could you please explain why all the blood is spattered all over the walls? And I'd say, yeah, this guy came in my house and he demanded money from me. In fact, he told me he was going to hang me if I didn't. So I shot him right in the face. And they would say, well, you're inside your home here, and it does look like it was a self-defense matter because the man is well armed, of course. So I guess we'll wrap up this investigation. But if it was the pencil neck geek from Capitol Hill, they'd hang your ass from the nearest yardarm. Now, explain to me what the difference is between the gangsters. Yeah. This man committed a terrorist act against a member of our government because he shot poor Poindexter in the face. When Poindexter tried to explain to him the reality that his personal banking information really isn't his and that we can take anything we want anytime we want, and if they argue or bellyache, we just throw them in prison. And we use the IRS as a weapon of mass destruction, and we have built a database upon him, created through this thing called the NSA, where we can basically pull up everything that he's ever done in his life and describe it in glorious, glowing detail for the jury. Well, the IRS got caught red-handed the other day breaking federal law in their zeal to criminally prosecute their political enemies. No, these people aren't guilty of actually committing any kind of a crime. They just donated money to the wrong party. And the IRS sent the FBI a database that contained 1 million pages of records of taxpayer documentation. All of it, which, according to the law, passed, this is the same law passed by Poindexter, the pencil neck, all of it a violation of his written law. But the fat pig marshmallows are sitting up in Congress saying, well, no, wait a minute, we're just going to have to take a better look at this because we're going to have to do a full investigation. And, you know, it's going to probably take us another 2.5 years to figure all of this out. "21 disks, 1.1 million pages in a database of information about 501c4 tax-exempt organizations and the donors who donated to them. The IRS was considering political speech by nonprofit groups to be so troublesome that it illegally assisted federal law enforcement officials in assembling a massive database of lawful political speech on thousands of American citizens. And this was back before the 2010 elections. So apparently this has been going on ever since Barack Hussein Obama took office. Steve Stockman, a Republican from Texas, says the real criminals are in the White House. I beg to differ. I say the real criminals are in the White House. I say the real criminals are in the Department of Justice. I say the real criminals inhabit both houses of Congress. That's the House and the Senate, basically 535 of them. I say the real criminals are the hundreds upon hundreds of federal judges who sit on the bench every day. I say the real criminals are the lower court magistrates who actually do all the real work, by the way. I say the hundreds of criminals are the attorneys. I say the hundreds of thousands of pencil-neck Poindexters who are running federal agencies and in their top executive management, all the way down to the guy who empties the wastebasket. That is the real enemy of America. It is government-sponsored terrorism. And they're all complicit, all participatory, all involved. There's nobody that's not involved. Because even the mail clerk knows what's going on. The IRS and the EPA and the DOJ. See, what they were before were missiles. But these were missiles that when you fired them off, they went up in the air and they came back down and they basically hit the ground. And just by force, they kind of created a little bit of damage around them. But when you arm the warhead, suddenly, they take on an entirely different role. They become weapons of mass destruction. And they're being used on you. Like a cruise missile that can be fired through the door of the palace by Bill Clinton. They're very highly targeted. Now, this is a blatant and clear and obvious violation of federal law. No one can deny that the IRS has no right to send information through to the FBI under any circumstances, period, end of story, bar none, period. What's going to happen? Well, I don't know. We're going to investigate. Somebody's going to go on suspension for 30 days with pay, of course, because, we don't want to hurt anybody here. What's going to happen about the Treasury disclosing your bank data and sharing it with spy agencies who are combining all of this in their master databases in Utah? These ones that are 17 football fields in size, basically a hard drive. The problem is that it's a hard drive about the size of Manhattan. And isn't it funny that everybody's got their own little compartment for data? And they're recording this radio program right now, and probably the fact that you're on the internet watching it. Maybe, if you're listening on radio, it's a little harder. So you might be safe in that regard. But the truth of the matter is, if you've ever visited our website or you've ever visited our Facebook page, or you've got a Facebook page of your own, they've already got your photograph. They're utilizing it for facial recognition to make sure that they've got an exact picture and a voice print of your telephone call so that they can put it all together and basically make sure that you're who you say you are and who they think you are. And if at any given point in time they need some information to gather together, they can take anything they want out of context, out of your files, combine it together to make it look like you are guilty, and indict a ham sandwich. And some asswipe in a jury box is going to sit there under a grand jury indictment and say, yes, I think this fella may just be guilty because, I don't know, the way they present this information, this guy is just... And that prosecutor, he seems so sure. I know I haven't actually heard from the person themselves because they're not here to defend themselves because this is a secret grand jury and there's no evidence from the opposing side. But I guess I'll just leave that to the next court to solve when the person goes to trial. I mean, after all, we have to keep law and order moving here, right? We have to have law and order. It's important. We have law and order. Law and order for whom? You mean law and order for the Treasury who wrote a memorandum of understanding between the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Division and the National Counterterrorism Group that said, we will provide our best efforts to tap information that you can use in a search for potential terrorism. And we'll distribute that to law enforcement. Meanwhile, you know, Congress is sitting up there saying, things are a little lean on the calendar today. Let's talk about immigration. You know what? Immigration is such a saucy subject, and everybody gets mad at us. So let's just worry about it later. How about we name a post office today? What do you guys say? The IRS gave citizen records to the FBI in an action that can be described as nothing else but government-sponsored terrorism. And frankly, nobody gives a damn. Because it's another in a long list of incremental treasons that we've just been accepting for so long at this stage in the game, it's kind of hard to figure out, well, you know, what should we do about it? They did so within limits, after all. That's what they're telling us, right? I mean, are we to believe that we can trust their judgment about limits? Really? Explain that one to me. Whose limits? What limits? The limit is 0. No tolerance. Or is that only for school children who would bite a breakfast cookie into the shape of a pistol? Is 0 tolerance only for the little girl who brings sunscreen, but because it might possibly be a toxic substance, she has to get a sunburn on a school class trip? Because we have a 0 tolerance policy about toxic. Come on. We have a zero tolerance policy about people being able to speak beyond 2 minutes in your city council meeting. You recognize, sir, that we're going to have to call the police. Officer, please come in and take this man away. He spoke for 2 minutes and 13 seconds. We can't have that. We have a zero tolerance policy right now. See, folks, this is the treason of incrementalism that we allow every day. And our minds allow it because, well, it's been happening for so long, and it happens at such a slow and glacial pace. Today we accept a little bit more, tomorrow a bit more, and soon we'll accept just about anything. See, you went from a lovable, happy-go-lucky puppy, bouncing around. But that master of yours, when you first started out life, it all looked like it was going to be so rosy. And then you felt the sting of that rod. And it cracked down across your backside, and you couldn't figure out what you'd done wrong. And it didn't take more than a couple of days before every time you see that guy, you hit the ground, your belly hits it, and you piss on the floor in fear. Because that's pretty scary. And as you get older and more powerful, and you grow taller, that man who's been beating you for so long, you're afraid to bite him. Even though you've got these sharp teeth, and you could literally jump up and rip out his throat, you won't. Because your mind has been trained to lay down and pee on the floor. And you will die in squalor and misery and fear. And just at the mere sound of his voice, your bowels get loose and greasy, and you just can't hold it. You've been listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap this show with our fourth segment about law enforcement, who happens to be loaded for bear. I mean, not bear. You! They plan on killing you and your family if you stand up. What do you think the guns are for? Duh.